All right, welcome back to Simply Trade Tips with Hammer and Heels. I'm here with Julie Parks, and I'm Renee Chiuchiarelli. And as always, we're going to leave you with an FIO, figure it out. Although this episode might be slightly longer because we're talking about technology and trade. And it's just so interesting and exciting. Julie and I can't help ourselves. So, Jules, what are we going to cover today? How are you first?
Okay, I'm great, first of all. I mean, goodness me, there's a lot of ground to cover and a lot of education that we can help folks with. So happy to do that with you, Renee. Um, so in the past, we discussed mitigators, we discussed importing and exporting. Love that episode. In this past one, I think we need to give some due credit to auditing and what automation is doing in the space of auditing. So where can we start, Renee?
Let's start with tariffs. Why not? They
Mhm.
aren't just higher.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to start with tariffs and the why.
Hmm.
They're more nuanced. As you know, when we started, we had one tariff per product. Typically, you might have some anti-dumping countervailing, but
Yeah.
you wouldn't have, 6 to 8 tariffs on one product. So two products can look identical and carry a different duty exposure based on country of origin, right? And so let's talk about that, Julie. That's the excitement of today.
Mhm. And I think too, like, focusing on kind of the why here, why is auditing important? Because the DOJ has really publicly identified import compliance and validation as part of their enforcement priority. We know Customs and Border Protection had already done so, but Customs and Border Protection has stepped up their enforcement into key focus areas. So if you're claiming country of origin or avoiding a tariff or claiming a derivative, you need to prove it, not just assert it.
So that's a big shift. Historically, many companies treated imports as transactional, myself included. You file the entry, you pay the duty, and you move on. Not today.
Right, and what we're finding is that that model, it just doesn't work anymore, Renee. Like, it's when you have, so many different components kinda driving the tariff, the eligibility, the refunds, or the penalties, right? We're basically taking what was passive work and trade, and we're turning it now into active work. What's next, Renee? What should we talk about next?
Well, the reality for most companies is import auditing is manual. I mean, even,
Mhm.
at the companies we were at, we had people literally pulling files and reviewing entries, human intervention entirely.
Right.
So,
And I think that you talk about the samples and the testing and the pulling of the invoices, and you get the facts like months or years later, and then you put your corrective actions in place, and the whole cycle can take quite long.
yes, and that creates 2 risks. You miss the systemic issues because you're just sampling on trees. I mean,
Mhm.
how can we do 100% review? Very difficult. I mean, we have on high risk, but you can't do 100% on everything, especially if you're a large importer. And you discover problems
Mhm.
after maybe the entries have liquidated. That's a major issue.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Gosh, liquidation, we haven't really cared much about that until the court cases and whatnot, but, yes, liquidation matters. And I also think too, like, when the government comes in and asks, "How do you validate that origin claim?" or "What is the product made of?" to determine your HS, or "Who is the seller?" Did you have evidence to support your tariff mitigation? The answer can't be that we trusted the supplier. You have to have some systemic procedures in place to kind of support that reasonable care method. And again, the standard is a bit different in countries, but it does rise to the level of giving it your best shot and not ignoring, right? That you do need to have some type of an audit program.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get into the topic of our show today and define audit automation. I mean, let's get into it.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think here audit automation and trade means using technology to continuously validate import data, right? So we're talking about value, classification, and origin. And where's your validation? Like, where's your true north? There's data in your ERP systems that you kind of need to leverage. By the way, remember, gone is the day where you used to use the data today and tomorrow it was going to get updated, and your value is now not correct, right? These systems and this automation, it allows you to kind of validate and go, wait a minute, there was an update to the ERP system. I think your import needs to be kind of revalidated. So we think that there could be that validation check against rules that you might establish, source data, customs evidence, historical patterns, which is kind of cool with artificial intelligence, as we mentioned, with exports and imports in general.
That's really cool. So instead of reviewing 50 entries, maybe a month or a year, we're reviewing them, all of them, consistently, real time,
Gosh, does that
flagging
seem
only
like daunting at first?
yeah, flagging what needs human attention. So we're still going to have human intervention, but it's just amazing that we can review every entry.
Right. And it's critical kind of when like the tariffs are what they are and the change could be based on like a supplier changed something, a manufacturing step was modified. Now you can't do a TIB, for example, right? Your component sourcing is different. Perhaps you flip a risk there, shifts in trade policy, right? We've seen so many shifts. And wouldn't it be nice that when a shift happens for the next week, you can do kind of like this real time review
Oh my
to
God.
make sure you got it right.
Yes.
I will say we haven't covered in an episode modifying your entry in an electronic way, but Renee, maybe we should think about doing that too, because that's kind of the holdup, right? So a lot of this AI is doing this, as you mentioned, like this continuous validation. Um, but the aspect of like you've got this pile of things to go through as a human and review and go, yeah, it's truly wrong. But then you need to queue it for amendments. And
Yeah.
sometimes the brokers get a little backlogged with that. And I think we need a better mousetrap there, but we can talk about that in a future episode.
Yeah. I would love to. Yeah. So basically, your product, your country, and your partners, and the use of mitigators is where everything converges. We need to make sure that we're reviewing our products, the country of origin, our partners, our suppliers, our vendors, and are we using mitigators?
Right. And we're talking about like tariff exposure, trade remedy applicability, free trade agreement eligibility, marking requirements, refund or protest opportunities. So some of this is beneficial for you as a company, but a lot of it is getting ready for that DOJ/customs review that might be imminent.
Yeah, so all of these elements are not static, as we've been saying. Things change. Julie's given a couple examples, but it's a legal determination based on facts. And guess what? Everything can change. So, if we are consistently
Right.
analyzing data every minute, we're catching those changes.
hmm And it's why, like if you haven't already briefed your leadership on the DOJ memo on them taking, import tariff matters into consideration, you really should. There's also been new memos from Customs and Border Protection on how they're increasing enforcement. So you might need to make a business case, as we mentioned before, for auditing and automated auditing. But it's really important. And I also think here it's just a shout out to customs brokers because they've had to do this because things are changing so rapidly and they're generally on the hook for getting some of these things right with your help as an importer exporter validating. But I think it's you might need to pause and make a business case for this.
Go back to our episode about business case, right? So, what
Yes.
does good look like?
Yeah.
What does good look like, Jules?
So I think automated audit controls might include something like comparing your declared origin to the bill of material or the supplier data, flagging origin changes tied to the supplier or component shifts to kind of look at free trade agreement eligibility, those types of things. We think of monitoring tariff exposure by country over time, right? How has it changed? My goodness, telling that story to your C-suite is probably pretty important so that they can make decisions related to that kind of tariff exposure from a historic standpoint. I think identifying outliers before entries are finalized or before liquidation is a piece. And then essentially the technology allows this work to be compared, as we keep mentioning, in a very real-time way. So please heed the warning, like the tech is out there. You just might need to like sit in the driver's seat and like get her done because the
Get her
government is doing it if you're not.
right. So this is less about perfection. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress, and it's about defensibility. So make sure that your
Yeah.
audit program is
And
defensible.
yeah, and I think too, regulators here, they don't expect zero errors, but they expect reasonable, documented controls that would catch some of these errors, um, so they don't end up getting to the point of them being egregious.
Yeah. And then, just to summarize, and we're getting towards our FIO, and Julie and I have said this a
No.
hundred times, but we don't think auditing should be manual anymore. I mean, we know
Mm,
that the majority of the importers are probably manual, but this
yeah.
get into the real time, get into the AI world, and like Julie said, get her done.
Right. And I'll say too, like the use of AI kind of ensures that these audits are risk-based and automated. Export compliance has adopted a lot of this for years, right, inside companies, and it's nice to see imports now getting their due. But I will say that with regard to AI, some of the data that you might be getting back from your broker might not be robust enough to run a comparison, right? So if you had your data from 3, 4 years ago, maybe you didn't get the PGA record set at that point in time, and maybe it's important that you see it today for some of the other government agency validations as well. So before you jump into AI, it's also important to kind of understand what data you have and what data that provider can gain access to so that you can do all the snazzy things that we discuss.
Yeah, right. And just get your control. You're getting better control of
Mhm.
costs and confidence. And that's what we need in a compliant,
Mhm.
environment is, cost control and confidence.
Right. Right. You got to know.
Yes. So what we've talked about today, audit automation, it doesn't replace judgment. It just gives us better information. We're not replacing people. And that makes the
Mhm.
difference. So, your ability to look at more data with less resources, right? And that's what we've kind of focused on today. The human eye, there are things the human eye can't
Yeah.
catch. So, Jules, what is our FIO?
Yeah. So, we started with the human days of checking, and I, for one, kind of love a great auditor going in and kind of finding things and turning the stones. Um, but there's low-hanging fruit that you can leverage with some of these tools and clean off your auditor's plate with the low-hanging fruit so that they can focus on kind of the more meaningful things, the things that require the connections that you might not be able to make with the technology today. So I think the FIO today is basically similar to the one before. Get out there, pick a provider, kick the tires, figure out what they can do. There's so many providers out there that can run some excellent comparisons, especially if you're providing EDI data to a broker. They can run a comparison. Oh my word, Renee. Like back in the day, we had to write all of these comparisons. We took programmers for hours to do an
Yes.
automated audit, and what AI can do in moments. That's why there's so many companies that are, and do they do excellent jobs? I would almost say, I'm not sure that they have to, because they're using the data that you submitted from the past to kind of understand whether you did it right in the future and whatnot. So and I know it, and then your human can get involved and kind of validate. Oh, wait, hang on. We knew that this was wrong and we amended it. So don't put that in the algorithm. But I think folks really just need to kick the tires, pause for a minute, do that for yourself, do that for your own education.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Awesome. FIO. Get her done. So,
Get her done.
visit our trade community, Trade Geeks. Tell us if you got the FIO done. And thanks, Julie. We'll see you next time.
Oh, thanks, Renee. Good episode.